Thank you. And my job, I think, is to really, well, other than keep time maybe, is to really get out of the way to enable the free-flowing discussions because we have such a wide range. So my only request will be, after I give just setting the tone 2-3 questions, is to be frank because the theory is well known. We know, like you said, 30-40% growths are going to happen. What does it look like? What are the bottlenecks? And I'll come to the specific questions that maybe people can shed some light on. But first I thought I'll shake things up and wake people up because it is the post-lunch sort of, you know, your bioenergy is still being internalized in your bodies. So I would request everyone here to please raise their hand. Because if you ask this question where raise your hand if, then only a few people bother. Now, lower your hand if you have not bought an electric vehicle because you are waiting for the charging station as the bottleneck. Not a single hand remains. So I think this emphasizes this point that this is an ecosystem problem. It is not just that, oh, if you build it, they will come. So let's not get into the manufacturing side, the vehicle model availability, or the pricing, there's tax issues, there's a whole suite of issues. But we're going to focus ourselves mostly on the charging, the business models. So a few quick thoughts and sort of pointers. We will not get into can the grid handle it, but we do have DISCOM leadership here, and it does matter because business models are not independent of regulatory models. And this really gets to this fundamental question for this space. Everything has a cost. There's no free lunch, the economists remind us. So it's about who builds this, who uses it, and who pays for it. Now, in a pure market, ideal sort of world, it should all overlap or go one to the other. But this isn't such a world. Never has electricity been that way. And there is no reason to expect something that is an infrastructure play will behave exactly the same way. So now, electricity has focused disproportionately on volumetric charges. There is a fixed component, but it is actually much smaller than the fixed costs seen by the DISCOMs. And the same question hits us even harder in an electric vehicle charging infrastructure world. Regulators have And one more important point, as we go forward for the electricity grid, almost all the costs are moving towards fixed costs. Renewables are a fixed cost play. Storage is a fixed cost play. EV infrastructure. Already you have utilities in the world where your energy charge is less than your fixed and service charges. So now, if the regulator has said your EV tariffs are notified, they're what, in the range of 4.5 to 5.5 typically? Is that the 5, yeah, range across the states in India? 7.7. Which state? That's, no, I'm saying the regulator rate, not the cost to serve to the consumer. EV tariff. So now if the tariff is 5 or 6 or 7 incoming to the infra, at what cost will they give it to the consumer of said electricity? Has to be vastly higher. So the numbers EESL had publicly quoted for, like in Delhi, where they have special tie-up. So it's not a typical case. It's not a commercial entity running it on purchased land. It was 9.3 or 9.5, I think, in that. But when I talk to private sector, like in Bangalore, there are some entities doing, they're saying because of land, it's not less than 13 or 15 rupees. So these are some of the questions that we need to grapple with. Second, a statistic from around the world. Utilization rates of public charging infrastructure are only between 10 and 15%. Third, land we've already mentioned. Fleets. Fleets in one level can fend for themselves. But even with a fleet, there is an upstream cost upon the grid where you have to ask yourselves, are we supposed to socialize this cost amongst all electricity users? So forget grid, let's even say we're dealing with a household. And now you've got this peculiar case of Ola Ubers where they may need overnight charging at home. The fleet may be set up in some cases of localized or centralized, semi-centralized. But now you've got some more spread out charging coming up. Now, the DISCOM needs to upgrade the transformer, or eventually it may need to upgrade the feeder. Now, what are the pricing models, or do we just continue socializing it? At which point you come to a very sharp policy question that who is paying and who is benefiting. And I'm very scared of business models or regulatory models where we cross-subsidize or subsidize the rich. So if somebody's buying a Tesla, they should be paying the fully loaded costs of that energy. So the last thing when we come to business models is another flag. We don't have to answer it, but it's out there from the grid side. TOD, time of day implications of charging. We have a paper on the Brookings India website on grid and EV. The kilowatt hours that EV are expected to use in 2030 is manageable, in the order of 100 billion units, assuming 100% two-wheeler, three-wheeler, four-wheeler and intracity buses are electrical by 2030. That's not a very large amount, kWh. But from a kW, if they all plug in at Friday, 7 p.m., same time, your grid will collapse. So these are some of the questions I wanted to now throw out.